All right, forgot to do that a little earlier.
Mary Fleischman, gonna say, part of this group.
Okay.
And I used to for many years. For many years.
And Liz Latochinsky, I'm chair of this panel and realtor in town. Been in the area for over 20 years. Okay, with that, we shall get started. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Dr. Andrew Allison, just member of the board.
Thank you. Okay. I hope you all have had an opportunity to read the minutes from our prior meeting. That was on July 18. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Mary made a motion. Do we have a second? Gary seconded to approve the minutes. Thank you very much. And do we have anybody yet on as a visitor? No. Okay.
Vote on the,
Oh.
There's been a motion and a second, so then in terms of the vote.
Okay. Can we have a vote to approve the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you for that point of. All right, moving on to item number 3 on the agenda. Mr. Stewart, would you like to present to us your information?
Yeah, I'll be brief. First, thank you for letting me come, and I apologize for not coming sooner. Myself and Dr. Chris Hennig from Portland State have been working, actually going back to 2018, looking at the impacts of marijuana legalization on public safety as part of a grant that Deschutes County received. We've put out a couple of biannual reports now. Initially, when I requested this visit, we were, so I'll take 2 steps back. Our initial report, we looked at the implementation of this grant. And as part of that, we did some baseline research into sort of how marijuana and marijuana legalization had impacted things like public safety calls for service, prosecutions at the district attorney's office, and kind of a whole range of measures to get sort of a baseline. We came back and followed that up over the course of the next 2 years, kind of looking to see how the legislation had either improved or fallen short. If we were seeing an increase in calls for service related to marijuana or a decrease. And then we also did a survey of, we started in Deschutes County and then expanded it statewide, a survey of law enforcement officers, both police and sheriffs, to look at challenges they were having implementing the law. Identified a number of things and many of which, to the state's credit, they've started to address. And we wanted to follow that up, sort of based on informal conversations we had as we studied this. We wanted to follow it up and do a survey of marijuana producers and retailers to identify challenges that they were facing that they believed, again, that the purpose of this grant is to look at illegal marijuana, not legal marijuana. So we weren't so interested in what legal marijuana was doing, but in how the state could do a better job of supporting people in the marijuana business legally to prevent either diversion to illegal markets, prevent access to youth. Initially, that was sort of our goal for this period. And this is really my fault. I vastly underestimated the challenges of gaining access, and that we've kind of had to put that on hold as we do more outreach and try to build some trust with people in the industry. So, and that was really foreseeable, and I apologize. So, but I did, as sort of part of that, realizing that we really, as researchers, we tend to research, like we want to pull data and count things, and we've mapped it, we've counted stuff, and I've coded, 17,000 calls looking for indications of marijuana. But we don't oftentimes go out and talk to people like in a more social setting. So I thought, well, I had this slot, I'd come out, introduce myself. Probably I'd like to come back at some point, maybe in 6 to 8 months, and start looking at trying to get this survey back online. As part of the preparation for the survey of producers and retailers, I did go out and visit. Obviously, visiting production sites, I could only get access to 1 or 2, but I was able to visit a number of retail establishments and identify. There was clearly issues the business is facing, that probably there could be policy or legislative changes that would actually help reduce diversion of marijuana from legal to illegal markets, and also that they could potentially streamline things for retailers and ideally producers to help, to help them be sort of viable businesses that basically make their lives easier. So ultimately, that's still our goal, but I think at this point, we're gonna need to do outreach probably for the better part of a year to kind of get the contacts necessary to do that. So, and that is, does anybody have any questions about the research or anything they would like to know?
So you're only surveying the retailers
And producers is our
and
goal.
producers,
Yeah.
okay.
We surveyed law enforcement year before last. And so we thought, and when we talked to law enforcement, we got just some really interesting insights. We kind of anticipated that if we talked to retailers and producers, that we would get similar insights. Sometimes when you talk to the people doing the work, at a high level, right, the state's making policy, they're drafting legislation. And sometimes there's a disconnect, obviously, between that level and like a person working in a retail establishment or a person, in a patrol car trying to just do their job, So our goal was to kind of try to bridge that gap. But like I said, I do think we underestimated the challenges of sort of getting access to we need people to fill the survey out. Yes, sir.
Has any of the research been published yet?
So we've done 2 reports to the state, and we actually have the survey. It's called the revise and resubmit. So we submitted it for publication. The couple things they wanted us to add or change, and that's real common. So we're in the process now, and then we'll be publishing. I think we've got to get it in by the end of this month or the end of next month. We'll have it resubmitted. But I don't have the date for the publication to come out, but there will be publications coming out from the research. And it's really important because, we take professionally, we're trying to take a very agnostic view of we don't want to get into, we're not studying legalization, is it good or bad? We're studying specific pieces of the legalization process. So we really don't take an opinion on if it should be legalized or shouldn't be, because that's really going to detract from the utility of our research. What our research is about is it has been legalized, and what can we do to improve this process? And I think for nationally, as you look at the landscape, it's highly likely that legalization will continue in other locales. So some of these early adopter states, probably missing the person, I think it might have been Oliver Wendell Holmes talked about, the states as the laboratory of democracy. But this is in a very real sense, we've got these early adopter states. So we should be doing everything we can to study them and see what can be learned from these processes. And Oregon, they're like I said, the legislature's done a good job of I think, addressing some of the early flaws in some of the early issues with legalization. But I'm sure there's a number of things we could continue to do to improve things. And that's kind of where our research is looking at.
Would we as a panel be able to get the reports once they're published?
Definitely, I can get you a copy of the peer-reviewed papers. I'm actually not sure. We do the reports for the state.
Okay.
So I'll check and see about, I don't see why I couldn't get you a copy, but they're paying for the
Sure,
research.
sure.
So I need to
Understood.
just check to give you guys, we actually have 2 different reports. So I'll see if I can get you both of them.
Greg, you can send it to Jen and me, and we'll forward it to the committee.
Wonderful.
If there's any way we can help facilitate your next research with the industry, please reach out.
Oh, thank you. There you go. Thank you very much. If I could get your contact, I'm sure. We did reach out to the OCA and they were helpful, but I think she was.
OCA statewide, yeah, they're pretty busy. But we can connect you pretty quick.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you very much.
We have Dr. Andrew, who has his hand raised.
Yes, sir.
A quick question. I don't know if you can say for sure yet or not, but has the cost to enter the market or inability to transfer between states been a factor at all that you've noticed?
So We have not studied that particular question. So I don't want to, when I say this, I want to be very clear that this is just my opinion. But I do think the fact that it's legal in some states and not legal in others certainly creates disparities in price, which impacts like out-of-state diversion. And I would also say that I haven't, again, this is where I was thinking it would be really nice to get more access to retailers and producers. But it seemed like just in my informal interviews I was conducting that there were a number of barriers, like regulatory barriers that made things sort of more complex, that may impact diversion. But again, I haven't studied those. We haven't studied those issues with the same rigor we've approached other things like, how the calls for service are, as sort of a high level overview of what we've found thus far. In our first report, we identified that contrary to expectations, there was actually an increase in calls for service to police related to marijuana, which was not one of the stated goals of the legislation, was to actually reduce the impact of marijuana on police services. But there's a silver lining there. So initially what we saw, and these are the things I can kind of say more definitively, is we saw this increase in calls for service, predominantly around DUIs and overdoses. Conversely, we saw a decrease in prosecutions, obviously, and with the exception of DUIs, of course. And then when we came back and studied it, so that was in our 2018-2019 report. When we came back and studied 2020, what we saw was the calls for service were trending down. And what we think, based on, and this is, so that's what we can say definitively, was that calls for service were trending down, which is a positive. More anecdotally, or actually qualitatively, right, from like reviewing the nature of the calls, what we think is happening is that as it's become sort of normalized, what we're seeing is people were calling a lot initially because you just weren't as used to seeing people like smoking marijuana in a park. That was that prior to the legalization of recreational marijuana, that was super uncommon. And so we think those were the types of calls that trended down. So that was sort of our initial. And then the survey of law enforcement was really just at a policy level. There's sort of a very confusing regulatory schema involving multiple agencies. Marijuana, and I think Dustin probably knows more about this than I do, but marijuana, when it comes to DUI enforcement, is a lot more difficult than alcohol because like the half-life, it's cannabinoid, I can't even say it, but there's nothing like an intoxilizer. Nothing as good as an intoxilizer that sort of is readily available to officers in Oregon. So those were some of the challenges that aren't necessarily insurmountable, but probably would something that the legislature should fix. So those were the kinds of things we could say definitively. And like I said, what we're hoping to do is again, when we found the officer survey just so enlightening on a number of sort of relatively simple things like increased access to drug recognition experts to address the DUI issue. Well, I suspect on the producer side, again, this is just from a couple limited conversations, but there's clearly supply and demand issues. The states identified that with like really massive levels of production that drive the price in Oregon down. And then sort of to Dr. Assan's point, when it's illegal in some states and illegal in others, if you produce a lot in one state, it drives the price down locally, and you're going to create gray and black markets, and it's going to get diverted out of state. So what do we do as a state to kind of solve that? And that's where I was hoping, that's where I thought producers and retailers could probably identify. There's probably a lot of folks who have some pretty common sense insights into how we could address that.
Good. Any other questions? From those on Zoom, any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you can share those reports, that would be great. I have been notified that I can change the order of the agenda. And Carrie, I see that you are participating by Zoom. I believe you'd like to make some public comments. Would you like to go now prior to the next presentation?
Sure, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, yes. And would you say your first and last name, please?
My name is Carrie Hardy. My husband and I were residents of Bend, Oregon, formerly, but have since moved out of the state actually, and I caught wind of your meeting just as we were leaving the state. So I'm very interested in understanding what it is that you're trying to accomplish with this committee. And the reason why I wanted to attend is that our son was impacted very adversely by marijuana, the high potency extract form, and it put him into a cannabis-induced psychosis. And when this happened, even our local police were really not real knowledgeable in detecting what was happening to him, along with a behavioral health technician that attended his case with the officer. So I'm just wondering how knowledgeable your committee is about how, you know, ever since we legalized, how it's impacting our youth. Both my sons grew up in Bend, Oregon. They went to college at Western Oregon University. And just at that time, legalization was taking place. And so everyone thought it was safe. Okay, college students today think it's safe, and it's not. It's nothing like what we smoked in the 60s, 50s and 60s, 2 to 3%. Now it begins at 18%. Well, my husband, until this happened to our son, we had no idea how much it had changed. We didn't know all the different forms that are out there in dispensaries. And I was able to connect with an organization who is now doing, sounding the alarm across many states right now. And she's even going to be featured this Friday on Dr. Phil, along with other doctors who are coming forward with what they're seeing in their ER rooms. So I hope, I'm not out of line in attending this meeting, but I just would like to know if your committee is well, I guess, aware of this.
First of all, I am truly very sorry that your son and your family experienced that episode. I hope he's better now.
He's still struggling. No, as a matter of fact, it took us 12 days to try to get him into an ER for the correct diagnosis. The first time he made it into an ER room, they gave him the wrong medication. It wasn't an antipsychotic. So he left the ER and went running into the town in his scrubs until his brother was able to find him, locate him, and get him back to the hospital. When we got him back to the hospital, then the doctor couldn't convince him to take the correct medication because he was in a state of paranoia. I don't know if any of you are aware of what this drug does to young people, especially young people with young developing brains. They can't handle today's strains. And it begins with paranoia and delusions, hallucinations. And like I said, he was on the road for 12 days, on cold winter nights, back and forth to California, back to Corvallis, to Bend, to McMinnville, and finally to Portland, where his friends were able to get him into an ER where they diagnose and prescribe the right medication. So I don't know, do your do your juvenile detention places, or, the people, your behavioral health, are they well versed in this? Are they now able to detect this? Because at the time this happened, our own police and the behavioral health didn't detect it.
Carrie, you've asked a lot of questions there.
I know it. I know. I
The
just
charter.
apologize.
No, and it's good information. I'm glad you're participating in this conversation. The charter of the Cannabis Advisory Panel is established for the panel to provide recommendations to the county commissioners in 3 areas. One is the money transferred to the county as a result of tax revenue on sales of cannabis in the county, in unincorporated areas of the county. Area number 2 is to increase public safety measures related to marijuana use and marijuana entities in the county. So that touches on what your comments focus on. And then number 3 is issues presented by the production, processing, wholesaling, and distribution of marijuana in the unincorporated areas of the county. So that's our charter. Those are our 3 areas. Are we experts on effects to juveniles? No, of course we're not. However, one of the next topics that we're intending on discussing at the January meeting, if we can get the presenter for this, is the juvenile use of cannabis. And this would be from the Health Services Department within the county. So if you could attend the January meeting, date to be determined, you may again be able to share your story and the story of your son, and potentially get some additional information.
Okay, thank you. That's fair. I mean, I did read the agenda and I read the packet, and I knew you were going to touch on that, the health services bit. I just, hopefully maybe I need to share my story with people that are more closely involved in your area of behavioral health. I don't know.
Well, in our next presenter, you might be interested in hearing the presentation. The slide deck that Tammy is going to use was included in the meeting information, but when Tammy presents it, I'm sure she's going to give more information than what's just on the slide. So feel free to continue to participate.
Okay, thank you.
And listen in.
And Carrie, my name is Mary Fleischman. I'm on this committee as well. I retired juvenile department, and my primary focus for being on this board is concerns with juveniles. And when we were looking at how to prioritize how some of these dollars are to be spent, we were looking at education specifically for young people in regards to the Black market. So we are looking at how to address that.
Well, that's good. I don't know if you're familiar with, like I said, that, on Dr. Phil, Laura Stack of Johnny's Ambassadors has developed some great curriculum that they're forwarding to many schools. She's meeting with colleges, speaking at colleges, universities, and high schools, middle schools, and I've signed on to also do the same. She's got many presenters that are lining up to, basically get out there and spread the word, because this information isn't reaching. The fact that we legalized, sent a green light to kids thinking that it was safe, and we're finding otherwise. And I can tell you, if you even just went to her website, you will see story after story after story. After she came forward, all these parents are coming forward telling their stories, and it's been a nightmare. So, this is happening in every community, and especially so in the states that legalized.
Yes. Thank you, Carrie. I do see.
I'll say, so you do have 2 of the county commissioners here attending this meeting this evening. I'm one of them, Commissioner Tony DeBone. I want to thank you for sharing your story and your message tonight. This is what we want to understand what's going on, what the big picture is, where the risks are. The people voted for this, and it's been a function of land use and now, the funding that's coming through from the tax associated with it. But, this is a mom talking about her child here. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm listening and thank you very much for sharing what's going on.
The other commissioner on the call is Commissioner Adair. Would you like to say a few words and introduce yourself to the group?
Oh, I'm not on mute.
You're
There you
good.
go.
Oh, I'm
We
good.
can hear ya.
Okay. Okay, Carrie, yes, I heard your story. If you follow Alex Berenson at all,
Yes,
yes, Alex is the one we followed. He has the largest imprimis ever printed. I believe it was like it was almost 1 million of the imprimis over marijuana. So no, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's why I really worry about it, because our a whole generation of kids have been raised with the idea that marijuana is medical. And as you've learned, there are incredible medical complications, the psychosis affecting what? Huge percentage of the developing brain. And I'm so sorry. But I'm so thankful that you're here tonight making your public comments. So thank you for taking the time and actually caring about what is happening to the youth of America.
thank
I
you.
also see Dr. How do you pronounce your last name, Andrew? Dr. Asen?
Awesome.
Awesome, thank you. I see your hand is up.
Oh, I never took it down.
Oh,
I-
okay. All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, again, thank you, Carrie. And Tammy, would you like to present?
Sure. Jennifer, can I get your clicker from you?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull the slideshow real quick here.
I can do that, yeah. Carrie, this is a nice segue into the content of my presentation today. Thank you for sharing your story. You had one question about whether or not you were curious, wondering if juvenile justice professionals were aware of the impact of marijuana, specifically the psychosis, the marijuana-induced psychosis. The short answer is yes. So the answer is yes, we are aware. We know what to look for if we suspect any of the youth that we're working with are experiencing symptoms that are related to marijuana-induced psychosis, as we do with any other mental illness.
Can I also ask a question?
Sure, please.
Okay, is it the police that will respond to incidents that they're called upon, or are you instituting a mobile mental health program like what was just recently, funding was just approved for the state of Oregon in that respect?
I can't answer that. So I work with the juvenile community justice. So the only youth that I come into contact with, or our department, are youth who have been referred or presented to us with delinquency issues. So youth who are, simply said, committing crimes in the community. We do have youth referred to us for possession of marijuana, which is not a crime. It's a status violation, but it is still something, and I'll explain how our department handles that. I would say that
I can talk to that too, though. So we do have our stabilization center, so that any age, 24 hours a day stabilization center, walk in the door or be brought in by a family member or public safety. So we absolutely have these services. And we do have a mobile crisis access team, people that will respond out in the community with or without public safety. So we are absolutely leaning into all that concept that you just asked
Is there an
about.
age limit on that though?
Well, if anybody walks in the door, we'll figure out, if they're really young, we'll make sure there's a parent associated with the situation.
Yeah, it was interesting when our son experienced psychosis. He was running from us, his parents. He thought, we were trying to kill him. So we couldn't get him into an ER. When we tried, he'd get as close to the door and then he would he would leave. So, it's a highly tricky situation when you have a young person that is experiencing psychosis because they're already paranoid, and how you address them. You don't want, someone in uniform showing up when he's already paranoid that the FBI or the police are after him. Okay, so I just hope everyone's fully aware of that.
And Gary, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's important to mention that, the main function of this committee is to make recommendations on how the tax money from cannabis is spent, probably our number one charter you mentioned. And I believe this year, our recommendation was education, enforcement, and mental health. So I think it's important to mention that was our recommendation of how those funds were spent. And that we would love to get into some of the deeper issues down the road as we can. And I think that's why we have people like this coming to present to us, so we do get that information. But we are limited in our function.
Right. Okay, Tim.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so I'll go ahead. Hi, Tammy Scopor. I am with the Juvenile Community Justice Department. Thanks for having me today. I have my first slide up there, which is to share with you what our department's mission is, which is to reduce risk, repair harm, and create opportunity. That's where we are today, October 17th. That's my name. I have been with the Deschutes County Juvenile Department. I'm almost at 24 years in January. It's been a wild ride. We've experienced a lot of juvenile justice reform in the last 15 years in particular, but definitely since I started 24 years ago. So that's my experience. Our department is a pretty small department, I would say. There's probably, in our detention facility, we have probably 12-ish, 14 staff that are in that part of our department. That's actually the one floor of our actual building, which is out on the public safety campus. And then there's about 30 or so staff that work juvenile probation services in our community. So that's supervising youth, that's representing the department in court, and of course, administrative, mental health, we have a behavioral health unit. So we're broken into teams. There's 4 main teams in our department in juvenile probation services, and I supervise one of them. So it's the assessment and court services team is the team that I'm currently supervising. I kind of have an idea of how, what the purpose, thank you for been listening. So I know the purpose of your group, your advisory council. I'm just wondering if people can just, I've got first names already, but just tell me if you have any experience working with youth, and if so, maybe, or experience working with youth, have you had any involvement with our department? Not meaning like your children or anything, but just like, have you, just any familiarity with our department and the work that we do, any work you've done with youth, that kind of stuff. So I'll start with this.
I was the district manager for Junior Achievement, which is a financial literacy program, and I actually led some of the content at the high school that was in the what that's called, the high school in the administrative building.
Oh, downtown.
Downtown, yeah. So these were youth that were removed from their quote home high schools because of behavioral issues, and I saw a wide gamut of engagement from those students.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's the expulsionary program.
I think it was, yeah.
28 years with the juvenile department on various capacities. It's all I can say. And I'm very familiar with the whole issue of young people, the MIP issue, and what you can, what you can't do with them. And I did all kinds of, I worked with youth before they got referred and did teen court. And then my last 8 years was probation officer for lack of a better term.
I used to work for the city of Phoenix, and I spent a couple of years in the Parks Department. We had a division called, at the time, it was called the At-Risk Youth Division. So we had 6 teen centers and different programs. We would attract them, get them into the recreation centers, and then we'd give them good doses of education and intervention.
So Sam Bachman and I, he works for in juvenile right now. We were dads together at the park board many years ago when our kids were young. And then, yeah, Mary and I, we were across the path all the time with her programs in Southern Deschutes County. So just as a community member and a father and park board member back in the day.
Been in law enforcement for 18 years, so I've had quite a bit of experience with juveniles, mostly from the enforcement side. My personal life, though, I mean, I'm raising 2 kids that are heavily involved in sports, heavily involved in the schools. I get to see a lot of what they're experiencing and seeing over my years. I've done a lot of volunteering work with the church, with youth groups, and different things like that. So I've had a fair bit of experience with juveniles.
Not necessarily my career path. I am a father of 2 boys, now both in college. Been a volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club, coach of numerous sports teams, mentor business students at the high school and college level. And just through my profession of working in outdoor products and sports, obviously spend a lot of time. Don't consider myself an expert, still trying to figure them out.
Yeah.
Let us know when you got to figure it out.
Yeah, I did a lot of youth coaching, football, wrestling, and then was a police officer for 26-ish years. Did a lot there with youth, and then work at a college now. I'm an adjunct professor. And in between, I did a stint with Multnomah County Health Department as part of a group called Big Village, where we looked at finding non-enforcement methods. It was predominantly alcohol, but we touched on marijuana and other drugs. But it was basically trying to divert kids from the criminal justice system to other resources when they were, again, predominantly alcohol, but marijuana as well.
Apart from being an aunt, no words. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and
we have
online, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Oxon?
I primarily have a consulting firm and vacation rental, but I also am a substitute teacher in the Tri-County area. So I have a lot of hands-on with youth, but not related to your department per se.
Okay. And Commissioner Adair?
There's a couple of boys too.
Commissioner Adair, are you still on?
Yes,
Okay.
I've been listening to everyone's what they've been identifying and why we're members of this board. Is that what you wanted to know?
Any involvement you've had with youth in any capacity?
I raised several boys. What a nightmare. That's why I'm on this group. Yes, yeah, drugs out there, and I have 2 grandchildren now. I so worry about them, not only with marijuana, but with fentanyl. I know we've already lost a young man in Bend who died from fentanyl, but there's such significant damage from marijuana, and I'm really thankful again that Carrie took the time to join our meeting tonight. So thank you again, Carrie. I hope you're still on.
Yes.
Okay, all right. It's nice to know my audience. That's why I took the time to just get a feel for your experience. So this is great. So objective today, I just want to do some reflection on a then and now, sort of, 2016 is what we're going to call then. And now, of course, is now, and just how we do business with youth who are referred to our department for minor possession of alcohol and marijuana. And then also how we're responding now, and then just final reflection. I'm kind of a presenter who likes to have people talking with me. I don't like to just talk at people, so I'm going to engage you all And I just kind of want to do some free associating, if you will. And just I'm going to throw some words up here on what's your temperature, and just get a gauge of where you all are with a few words that we all use in our community. And I think we have, based on just our different frame of references, our moral compass, our personal histories, our personal experience, we think a little differently with these words. So let's just start with the first one. Teens. What words come to mind? Have to.
You're awesome.
Anybody get hot when they start thinking about the word teens or teenagers?
Challenging.
Yeah, challenging. I think they're challenged. Yeah, different circumstances growing up as a teenager now than any of us before, right? And recognizing they went through that 2 years of COVID too, the isolation. Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a rough couple of years on our teenagers for sure. How about marijuana and alcohol? What thoughts come to mind? Is this a hot button subject for you? Is it maybe tonight it's a hot button subject?
Figure it out, and I think it's for us to help them figure that out.
Yeah.
Because it's there, they're gonna do it, we all did it.
One of the things when I was doing the work at Big Village, which was this alcohol, we looked a lot at both, it was really binge drinking. But one of the things we found doing research into that was that because of social media, we'd ask the kids, state does a survey, and we'd ask them how many of their friends do you think binge drank in any given month, and they would say 75, 85%. And then you'd actually ask the kids, how many of you binge drank in any given month, and it might be 20%-ish. But so when I see that, I often think of misinformed. Social media, they see all these images of all these kids partying, doing all this crazy stuff, and they start to perceive it as the norm. When in fact, if you actually ask them, the vast majority of them aren't doing that, but they misperceive it because of the influence of social media.
Which I forget the survey the school does in middle school and high school, I forget the name of it now.
Yeah, it's actually Oregon Health Authority does that.
Right, and if that could be shared with the kids to know what those numbers really are, because that's exactly what comes up in those surveys.
Yeah, well, and it's not just youth that are misperceiving it, adults are, they think, many adults think that everybody's smoking weed. Well, from what we know, they're not. Gary, next.
I just have to say that the word marijuana is a bit of a trigger point for me.
Oh, yeah? Tell me.
Well, it would be like saying marijuana and booze.
Marijuana and booze?
Because marijuana is actually a derogatory slang term. So I generally prefer in professional circles to refer to it as cannabis, but it still amazes me how often it's used.
I appreciate that a lot. I'm making note of that and consider that.
Well, and I also think when the state was starting to legalize cannabis, it was recreational use. And I think that gives it, the fun. It's,
Yeah.
It's the party, right? It's
Another term I'm
recreation.
not really happy when I
Yeah.
use it. Yeah,
Right,
it's
right.
not recreational.
Right, versus medical. So I think they were trying to create a division between the two uses of it, but I think recreational.
And there's not a recreational alcohol.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
It depends on who you ask.
I'm gonna ask that question. It's Gary, right? Yeah, I'm glad I asked that. Any other final thoughts on this one? How about risk? Thoughts on the word risk?
That's what teens are all about.
Risk
Testing.
management.
Risk management, right? That's actually, we're gonna talk about risk management a little bit. And then discipline.
I see that word and I think, the shaking of the finger, you're bad, you're bad. I think certainly if they are caught, discipline is warranted, but I think education before discipline is needed is probably a better avenue, a better way to approach it.
There's also the other use of the term discipline, as in discipline.
True, yeah, good point.
Because I didn't automatically go to.
I've actually thought the same thing. I thought I wish I had more of it.
Yeah.
I wish it was a little more disciplined.
I see discipline, I think consequence. But I think that people look at discipline as a bad word, which I don't, I personally don't think it is a bad
A
word.
negative connotation,
I
yeah.
think that consequence is not a bad word. I think that we as a world have gone away from consequence. And therefore, if we were to apply a little bit more discipline, the consequence would not have as much issue. Not always, it's not always, and just the whole world's not a nail if you're ever on the hammer. But I think it's one of our tools that we've got.
When we use the word, well, consequence, you brought that one up, with youth, we also, we essentially tell them we like the word outcome better. Outcome, because we talk a lot about thought behavior link and the impact of your behavior, not only on yourself, but others around you. So the consequences of your behavior is the outcomes of your behavior can be good, right? Positive and negative, so. Well, thanks for participating in that. One last word pops up, juvie, any thoughts on juvie, the word juvie?
Again, very negative. Oh, you're going to juvie.
With so detention?
Yeah.
Like you're going behind some bars or in
Yeah.
secure confinement? Yeah, definitely. So teens for us, we look at teens, our temperature on teens is, it's what we're all about, right? It's the youth in our community. We think of them as, they're capable of great things, they have high energy, they're resilient, they're people, young people who have their prefrontal cortex is rapidly developing, but not quite there. Marijuana and alcohol, substances that do great harm to the developing brain. Risk, we talk about what's a youth's past and current circumstances that put them at risk for future trouble in the community, particularly criminal activity. We're the Juvenile Justice Department, so we're most concerned with youth that are at a high risk for committing a crime in our community. Discipline, yeah, I really appreciate the things you all have said about discipline. We look at it as identifying and strengthening each young person's intrinsic North Star, like what leads them to be productive individuals in the community as they cross over that 18-year-old into adulthood. And then juvie, it's got a bad connotation, right? It's lock up, bad kids. As I shared our mission statement before, we want to create opportunity. We want to repair harm. We prefer juvenile community justice over that. So for JCJ, that'll work, yeah. So reducing risk, creating opportunity, and repairing harm. So I told you then was like 2016-ish. We went through quite a reorganization in 2016. A lot of that was based on juvenile justice reform had just gained some great momentum. We've had a lot of research money to help fund research in the juvenile justice world. So then, and I would even maybe call this more like 2010, maybe early 2000s. It's just this idea that juveniles or young persons are just not quite adults, so they're little adults, underdeveloped adults, and really feeling like there was a need for us as a department to control youth, so put things in place to control youth in order to help them solve problems and keep themselves safe. Now, I think we value them much more as human beings. We fully recognize the brain science, the prefrontal lobe is still developing, but it's not developed. There's a lot of youth can do, young people can do. So we help them to understand risk and impact. We look at them as people who are able and willing to articulate and reflect on their behavior, take ownership, personal responsibility. We really strive to work with them. We know that relating with youth is going to get us a whole lot closer to meeting our mission than just putting things in place to try to control youth. As you know, well, maybe you don't know this, but juveniles who come in contact with our department for being referred for a crime in the community, they are not with us forever. So if we put these external controls and then they finish up their probation supervision and it expires, the external controls go away, right? So then we have a youth out there who doesn't have the external controls. So we know that now, what we're doing now has a much larger impact on a youth when they leave our department or cease their interactions with our department.
It's that relationship building that
Yeah.
the department's always done, is relationship building.
Right. Yeah, we want youth to leave us in better shape than when they came to us. We don't expect perfection. The most pro-social, lots of you have teenagers, or maybe they're now older. I've heard some college kids. Adolescents will never be perfect. They will never be perfect. So it's just not a realistic expectation.
But when they graduate from your program, I'll say it that way, do they have an opportunity to, do they have someone they could call in your program, in your department, if they run into a situation that's foreign to them or they don't know how to handle it?
Well, I think that probably not as a formal mentor. I mean, we recognize that youth who are involved with juvenile justice professionals, just simply involvement with us in the work that we do can put them at risk because of this association with being connected with the juvenile department. That said, all of our community justice officers probably in their final meetings just say, "You got my number. Like, you've had it on your cell phone for a year now. If you need anything, just call me. I might not be the right person, but I will get you to the right person." Right. Obviously, emergencies, it's always a 911 call. We can't respond to emergencies.
But I would just add to that, as retired from the juvenile department, it amazes me when I run into these kids that I worked with 5, 10, 15 years ago. And then they're like, "Hey, Mary," and they're telling me how they're doing.
Yeah.
So that relationship stuff is important. It's amazing.
Yeah. So then very much making decisions. So now I'm going to talk just about how we used to respond to referrals for alcohol and marijuana. So when I say referrals, I just mean law enforcement investigations. Kids aren't arrested anymore. Kids aren't, they're not cited really all that much anymore. Most of the time, you can attest to this, we'll get a report, a law enforcement report from our sheriff's office, our city of Bend police, city of Redmond police. And then that's the essential referral. And if there's probable cause that a crime has occurred, then we will log it in and we'll proceed through our routing processes. So when I say the word referral, that's what I mean. It's just a law enforcement report came to us alleging possession or use of marijuana or alcohol. So we used to be just really statutory driven. We used to just think, okay, it's an MIP, it's a low level crime, they're low risk. We're not going to do much with them. Now we're very, yes, we're guided by statutory because it's statute, because that's law. But we also understand that we make risk-driven decisions as well. Yes, many of the youth who come that are referred to our department that are first-time MIP or alcohol referrals are low risk. Most of them are actually, but not all of them are. We have very high, medium and high risk youth. And when I say risk, I mean risk to reoffend, remember. So we're much more risk-driven now, and we'll put our resources with youth that we know are at a higher risk to reoffend in our community versus those who are not. Drug use, it was just sort of this notion that any drug use is abuse. We've learned a lot about drug use. We've learned a lot about teenagers, their habits, how they use drugs and alcohol. So it's super important that we do assessments. And so we're much more assessment driven. And then of course risk driven as well. So assessment driven meaning accessing our other local service providers, particularly behavioral health, mental health department, to use their expertise to determine if a youth is at a place where it's, what kind of services are most appropriate to deal with that particular youth's use or abuse. They get to decide what that is, not us. And then also there's, we definitely rely on our providers in the community, but if the use is driving crime, driving that youth's delinquency in the community, then that's going to be our concern as well. So we have ways to address that in-house. So definitely lots of partnerships with our community folks, community service providers. Risk, so then it was like, you know, if they did it once, then, you know, it was just, you know, a warning letter and there would be no other response. Now, like I said, it's much more assessment driven, a much more dynamic decision. Then there was much scared straight. You probably, some of you who grew up in the 80s remember scared straight. It doesn't work. Tons of research on scared straight. You cannot scare a kid into good behavior. You might be able to scare them into good behavior for 24 hours, but it is not sustainable. And risk is contagious. So if you can scare a kid straight, chances are they're a real low risk kid and we don't need to worry about them. If we bring our low risk youth into our services, that could potentially increase their risk because of the associations that may happen once they start working within our programming department. And I think symptoms, you know, with risk are misunderstood as the actual causes. So definitely relying on research on the risk. Discipline, spare the rod. Yeah, long gone are the days where, you know, we feel like we have to punish in order for, punish young people for wrong behavior in order to teach them what the right behavior is. Like that's just, it's, again, we select discipline that reinforces the positive behavior that we want to see. Effective reinforcement, it really does work. Research tells us it works, and anecdotally, I will tell you it works. It used to be real arbitrary in our decision making, and I'll get to an example here in a minute, where, you know, we're just kind of picking and choosing what we think is the most appropriate response based on how we feel, right? Now, very structured, very equitable are our goals. Teaching them a lesson is kind of the scared straight. Risk is contagious. So often we still get parents who will call and say, I want you to throw the book at my kid, put him in detention for an MIP, for they shoplifted something at the grocery store. You know, tired of my kid, put him in detention for a couple days. It's gonna make, they'll change behavior. Well,
You to do the work.
What's that?
We want you to do the work for them.
Well, and guess what? Detention doesn't change behavior. Like we know that. Again, 24 hours might change some behavior, but it is not sustainable. We want kids to be able to sustain behavior change. Okay, so then this is that arbitrary decision making we did. I remember sitting in a conference room back in like 2008 with Jeff Williams, community justice officer, who's now moved on to the sheriff's office actually. Code enforcement, is that your office? No. Okay, anyway.
Community development.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Anyway, so he's moved on, but I remember sitting on a big dry erase board saying, okay, what are we going to do when it's the first time MIP? What are we going to do when it's the second time MIP? What are we going to do when it's the third time MIP? And then just being like, well, okay, for the first time, let's just send a warning letter with some resources. The second time, let's give them some resources and then 8 hours of community service. Third time, oh, okay, well, let's do the letter, the resources, you know, just graduating it, right? Every time you get another one, you just get another layer of consequence, right? So that's very arbitrary, right? So we used to do business in that way. Well, what we have learned since then, and this is very data driven, so this is our data, is that turns out violations, so minor possession of alcohol, possession of marijuana, isn't necessarily the same thing as low risk. So we were very, very much treating violations because they're low level offenses, they're status offenses, as low risk. Well, they're not. So here's some data here. We looked at recidivism levels for first time marijuana possession, alcohol possession, and then first misdemeanor. So examples of first misdemeanors that are kind of our more common. Theft 3s, theft 2s, assault 4s, harassments, those are kind of the most common with our teenage population. And what we found, as you can see, the red bar is new crimes within a year. So we're measuring recidivism.
Within a year of,
So
be seeing you.
yeah, so one thing then, remember, it's 2016, when we reorganized, we started to do what's called brief screen. And it's actually just screening out youth based on some of the collateral resources where we have information about a youth's history in the community. So it's not a phone call, it's basically a police report and looking at some law enforcement records management systems that we have access to. So we not only started brief screening these first time offenses, but we also changed our supervision protocols based on how a youth screened out. So what we found is first time MIP possession, and then we measured new crime within 1 year for that particular youth. So what you'll see is in the red bar on marijuana possession is new crime at about, I don't know, 19%. We found first time MIP alcohol also was around that same amount for recidivism. What we also found is that our first time misdemeanors are recidivating, if that's such a word, at the same rate. So again, proving that violation does not equate low risk, right? And then the yellow ones, those are actually our felony recidivism. Again, we found that essentially within 1 year, still 6 to 8%. A little higher with the alcohol, interesting, but not anything all that remarkable. So the bottom line of this is just that first time MIP alcohol and first time misdemeanors are all, per our data in Deschutes County, are committing crimes at the same percentage.
That's also insane. Like when you think about those high percentages, literally that rocked my world, like 7-8% of, there must be something going on in the background for them to get sent to you. Because if you think about it, 8% of kids are recidivating in 1 year with a felony.
Not 8% of kids. 8% of the youth that are referred to.
That's what I mean, 8% of the youth, but you compare that, how many kids commit a felony in any given year? Probably less, I mean, like a fraction of a percent, right? So the kids that are being referred to you, if 8% of the ones being referred to you for alcohol possession, or 5 or 6%, there's something happening on the front end there. Somebody, probably the officer who's given them the ticket would be my guess, has already pre-identified them through some mechanism, probably really informal, that this kid is at high risk, which is why we're sending you the referral in the first place. Because if you think about it, the absolute percentages of kids who commit felonies in any given year, right? Like, so this is, I mean, it's super low. So that's pretty amazing, pretty frightening actually, if you think about it. As a like how 20% of kids are committing a misdemeanor in 1 year, and again 6 to 8% are committing a felony. That's wild. I mean, it's just a really interesting finding.
Well, but they're actually very small numbers though. I mean, that's the point there, is it's not 8% of the 40,000 youth that live in Deschutes County. We actually only interact with, it's actually less than 3%. Less than 3% of the juvenile population in Deschutes County is actually referred to us.
Right. That's what I'm saying though, because if you think about again the kids, as the whole population, most of those kids are still drinking, and a significant portion are using marijuana. You know, when you think about like in any given year, I don't have the numbers, and this would be from Multnomah County when I was studying it, but significant percentages of kids in any given year both use marijuana and drink, and don't go on to commit other felonies or other misdemeanors. Like that's the normal outcome, right? As a kid, many kids use marijuana, many kids use alcohol. The vast majority of them don't commit a misdemeanor or a felony in a given year. So if 5 to 7% or 8% of the ones that come to you are committing a felony, and that's just a pretty, I think that's a pretty fascinating piece of information. I don't want to take your time, but I just.
Yeah, it's 18 to 20% essentially. Yeah, and so actually it's a great segue into this next part, because that was then, that's what we realized. So 6, 7 years ago, we spent a couple of years doing a bunch of research on our own data that informed the now. And what we found was that, yes, 18 to 20% of the youth that come in on first time marijuana, alcohol, or misdemeanors were actually coming back to us within a year. So we thought, wow, we're clearly not screening youth well, because if we're sending everybody a warning letter on their first time, we've missed 20% of the youth, right? So thank you for doing that math and then allowing me to confirm that is the math, 18 to 20%. So here's what we did. We implemented the brief screen, which is what I told you about. It's just a screening tool, 12 questions. And yeah, 80% of the youth that we screen now are just a warning letter, and they're one and done. We don't see them back. So that's our universal screening. And so that 20% we were super curious about and wanted to figure out how can we intervene with those 20%. And turns out this screening tool that we now have is accurately telling us who that 20%, 18 to 20% is.
With 12 questions?
Yes, yes.
Can we answer
them? Yeah, so, and I'll get to that in just a second, but, now we have the screening tool that we use. It is accurately picking out those 18 to 20. And so now this is how we're responding. So we're doing the universal screening, which is assessing for criminogenic risk. If it's indicated, then we're sending them out for alcohol and drug screening. And then at times we'll bring them in for a full intake for a full assessment, which again is an assessment assessing risk to reoffend in the community. Low risk youth, we're diverting them, meaning that we're most of the time just sending warning letters, but giving them a warning, connecting the families with resources. If we have a medium or a high risk youth, then we are supervising them. And then contingency management. Contingency management is it's actually an evidence-based, loosely say the word program, it's not really program, but model of supervision that has been shown to help youth who are alcohol and marijuana users. I use the word marijuana now and I keep thinking, so I appreciate that so much that you shared your thoughts on that. It's like cognitive behavioral work is what that is. So it's been highly effective. And then, so how we know the rescreen is working and it's identifying that 18 to 20% is Southern Oregon University studied it for us, essentially. I don't think they quite validated it. I'm not certain. I think that's a process that is still in the works, but preliminary findings are that it's predicting risk well. Youth scoring higher risk have higher recidivism. Again, that's that group of 18 to 20% that we really wanted to focus on, knowing that all the other ones truly are low risk. I'll go back. Let's see. Yes, how do I go back? Here, whatever you put the name.
Yeah, there was last view.
Yes. There we go. Thank you. So right-hand side, a couple of other interesting things that they found were that female and male young people are referred equally for alcohol. So referrals come from law enforcement. That's interesting. Males make up 64% of referrals for marijuana. I thought that was somewhat interesting. And then there's definitely race and ethnicity differences, primarily where we are seeing that white youth comprise a larger percentage of referrals than their general population in the county. So they're disproportionately overrepresented on marijuana and alcohol.
That's the makeup of our county.
No, it's disproportionate. So this is larger percentage of referrals than their general population. So they are disproportionately overrepresented.
Based on their, yeah.
So basically in Deschutes County, I think, I'm gonna give you some rough numbers here. I think it's 82% white. We're getting referrals more in the 86%. 86% of our referrals are white youth. So they're over represented. Okay, so let's move on to now brief screen. So like I said, you can see in the graph here. So essentially we, let's see, how's the best way to describe this? So we instituted the brief screen process accompanied by the new model of supervision, new supervision protocols, and we found that it actually is reducing criminal recidivism. I say this somewhat loosely because we know other things are involved. So data from prior to 2016 is what was before we instituted the brief screen. Data post 2016 up through 2021, well, we all know what 2 years of that was. It was the pandemic. We can't discount the impact of the pandemic having an impact on our numbers of recidivism, but essentially between 18 to 20% of youth with first-time referrals received a criminal referral with 1 year. That was before we started the screening process and the new supervision protocols. Now, our recidivism rates are 8 to 12% of those who received a first-time referral are coming back to us in a year. So we went from 18 to 20%, and now we're at 8 to 12%. Again, the only major difference for us is supervision protocols and our screening. We know there's a whole world out there that impacts what even comes into our department in the first place. We're just responding to what gets sent to us. So interesting numbers. I don't think we're at a place where we're like, wow, what amazing work we've done, but it's interesting.
The statistics on your final numbers, though, was it 21, 22?
On the final numbers, which ones?
Your finished study, your now study.
Yes, 8 to 12% actually.
So did Measure 110 have anything to do with that?
Well, those are the questions I don't know. I mean, here's the thing with Measure 110, I'll just give you some numbers. Prior to 110, I would estimate we would get 10 law enforcement investigations on possession of any of those drugs. And for those who don't know, 110, is everybody familiar with 110? So the decriminalization of cocaine, heroin, meth, all those drugs. So we would get maybe 10 a year. Now, I think we've had one since 110. So again, we just respond to what comes in the door. Why they're not coming in the door is, but I think there's a lot in play, which is why I don't want to hang our hat and say we arrived.
It would be interesting though to pull 110 out and see those numbers. I mean, just be interesting. Like if you pull 110 offenses, if you pull drug offenses out.
Of juvenile?
Right, if you just redid the recidivism numbers, but but pulled out drug offenses. So just looked at recidivism for crimes other than those that were legalized by 110. Just.
Yeah, they wouldn't, so those would have been misdemeanors, and then felonies in the, 2011, I think those were felonies. And then they moved into, so the decriminalization has happened over many years. So this first misdemeanor on the data prior, well, not this, but on the then, would have included misdemeanor possession charges, which at the time of 2016, they cocaine possession, heroin, meth, those would have been misdemeanors.
Well, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just meant you could still pull those out and look to see what your recidivism was, which would be cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure the numbers would be enough to really be telling, because like I said, it was like 10 a year. Like we just didn't get possession of any of those drugs that often prior to 110. So, and then like I said, I think we've had one since. Okay, the last slide here is, yeah, I think I've covered this essentially, post the brief screen and the new supervision model, we are seeing recidivism is lower, Again, not quite sure really what to make of that, but it is the data, so. Yeah, I think I'll probably just, I was gonna reflect on this, but we are way past what I thought we were gonna be at, so I'm just gonna skip that. If you have any follow-up questions, there's my phone number. I'm happy to talk afterwards as well, and give additional contact information, emails, et cetera. Any questions?
I would just make a comment, just from my own experience, it's like, when the kids are coming in at first time, marijuana, whatever charge, it's like, okay, you can't really have a conversation. When they start getting the second and third one, you can actually have a conversation, like, either you're really stupid and bad at this, or there's an issue. And I think that's what it's gonna come to, that was my experience in working with that particular clientele. And then when we implemented that assessment tool, I mean, that really helped us kind of flush that stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many referrals do you guys get a year?
All referrals?
Like you said you received about 10
Okay,
like
so-
drug-related referrals. Like how many criminal referrals do you generally get for like theft and other sorts?
Right. So I would say probably we get about 1,200 referrals a year. And that of course includes runaways and all status violations like curfews, MIPs, marijuana, alcohol, and then of course misdemeanors and felonies. Felonies are a very small slice of what we get. I'm not sure I want to ballpark because I'm probably wrong. The lion's share of what we see are MIPs and those lower level misdemeanors that I shared, theft twos, theft threes, harassments, assault fours, is the lion's share of what we see. I have a hand up.
Yes.
Austin, Dr. Austin?
Yeah, I was wondering if you factored into any of this social and economic standing, and if numbers are higher in certain economic, family situations, and if that has anything to do with bias or prejudice from officers referring.
Well, so there's two things that I'll speak to. So the first one, well, I'll speak to the second one first. In terms of like, what's, whether there's bias or anything going on through our law enforcement when they're making decisions out there. I mean, I'll speak personally. I don't think any of us can walk this world without biases. So, so I would say yes, that is absolutely a part of law enforcement, and all of us. I mean, even when they come to us, I have to check my own biases as well. Now, the first part of your question, I'm trying to think. I don't think we have a good data point for the socioeconomic status of the youth that come to us. We don't know. It would just be all assumptions based on what they tell us. And I guess you could add all those biases in there as well, right? But we have no data point that tells us when a youth comes in that they are from an affluent family or they're
Or
houseless or whatever. I mean, we obviously learn a lot about a youth and their family, but we have no data point to be able to pull. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm still curious about those 12 questions.
Well, I'm happy to share with you. So the 12 questions actually, so we have in the state of Oregon, we have a validated risk assessment tool. It's the juvenile crime prevention assessment. All counties in the state of Oregon use it. It's been validated twice. The researchers they helped us come up with the brief screen. And they basically identified 12 of the most predictive risk factors on that larger assessment, that if they were ever going to weight risk factors, they would be weighted differently than the others. So risk factors, there are 33 in the larger comprehensive assessment. The 12 that are pulled from that assessment are the most predictive of future crime, future criminal activity. So,
And the youth that you're working with, they answer those questions honestly?
Well, it's self-disclosure.
Okay.
And it's, well, self-disclosure, not in that we hand them a piece of paper and they just go, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. It's self-disclosure in that it's an interview style, administration of this particular assessment. And we have 2 people who do the initial assessments in our department, that's it. They're highly experienced, and kids and parents tell you a lot of stuff.
And the parents are part of that assessment, so.
Yeah.
Oh, they are?
Yes, so if the
Yeah,
kid
okay.
says one thing and the parents go, no,
That's not right.
Yeah, here's the thing, it's not perfect,
Yeah,
but it is a validated tool, so it clearly has been validated in terms that, it assesses for risk as accurately as it can. Yes, we will have a family walk in and they'll just be very guarded, you can tell who they are, they won't wanna share everything. And you just know, but that's the best we can do, we can't, we're not gonna answer yes to we're not gonna answer yes to a question if we don't believe it's met the criteria to answer a yes, just because inside, I know the kid's not telling me the truth. That's not how we administer the assessment. Worst case scenario, we don't assess them accurately and they come back on a crime. I mean, yeah,
And so they get reassessed.
and then they get reassessed.
with that extra data that you've got on them now, yeah.
Yeah, well, and anyway, Gary, yeah.
I'm just curious, what substance do you see abused the most? Is it alcohol, cannabis, rival that now? Or is it opiates and oxy, the opiate pandemic we're in?
Well, I'll tell you, like, not all the youth that we're working with are using or abusing substances. Now, we have testing, this is such an interesting, timely question because of some other conversations I've had today about our testing labs. And, fentanyl is real hard to find that in a drug screen. Marijuana, like, they got that one down. Alcohol's out of your system in 3 days. That one's not easy to catch a youth using, right? So a lot of how obviously, if a youth is telling us that they're using, or if their drug screens are indicating that they're using, then that's when we rely on our community partners, our health department, and our behavioral health folks who are the experts. And we also have like Rimrock Trails. We have some other service providers in our community that will then make that referral out to those entities to help determine what is the level of need, if any, for that particular youth. But so many of those other drugs, well, there's reasons why kids don't tell us they're using cocaine. Cocaine's in and out of your system. Chances of it coming up on a drug screen when we're doing them randomly, maybe every few weeks, slim to none. So we don't focus so much on, don't use drugs, and here's all the reasons not to use drugs. It's managing risk. Commissioner DeBone was talking about teenagers as managing risk, right? So we get in it with kids, with peer relationships, and we help them to figure out where are they at the highest risk for trouble. And trouble could be drug use for them, maybe not, right? Because not all kids are using. It could actually be vandalism, other delinquent acts. So we're working on them to help them identify those risky situations. Many of them are with peers that ultimately result in their experimentation or their use or abuse of substances. So, you're gonna be hard pressed to have any of our officers tell a kid, simply don't use drugs. Like, that doesn't work, right? We gotta help kids understand how to manage that risk around them. Alcohol and marijuana are pretty easily accessible for youth in our community. So that's how we approach it. Yes, we disapprove of use. Very clear about the disapproval. We do not approve of use, but we're not gonna sit and tell a kid, don't use, and then expect them to not use. That's not gonna work, so. Yeah, I can't answer the question, because I don't think I have enough data. Yeah.
Any other questions from our Zoom community? Okay, Tammy, thank you very much. Great presentation.
I just want to add, if anyone is interested in looking at the curriculum that Laura Stack of Johnny's Ambassadors has developed. I'd be happy to send it to you. She's willing to even give it freely. You know, there is on her board, it consists of a scientific advisory board of doctors, physicians, psychiatrists, therapists. Okay. And what they're finding is this drug, the younger you start using it, the more chance of addiction. And it's a hard thing to fight, you know? So when you say these, you know, these young people are being referred to you, oftentimes they can't help themselves. Like I said, the younger they begin using marijuana, today's strong marijuana, the higher the percentage of addiction and mental health issues. And that's what you're going to see. And that's what's happening. If anybody's even been looking at the statistics of Colorado, one of the first to legalize, that information is out there. So if you
Carrie, we as a panel would be interested in receiving that information, and Eric said that he'd reach out to you to get a copy so he can share it with us.
okay, that's great.
Thank you.
I encourage dollars towards education in your budget.
Thank you.
So thank you for letting me participate.
Of course. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So the next agenda item is our next steps. We've got a tentative meeting in January. The third Monday is MLK holiday. So January 9th or 23rd are possible options. If it were my druthers, I would say the 9th. Any comment on that?
Yes.
We've always done Monday though, Gary.
Yeah.
It's like you're suddenly surprised we're gonna do it.
No, I just thought you were moving them around. So
Oh,
they're both open for me right now.
Okay. Justin, do you have a preference?
The night's good.
9th is good. And Dr. Austin, is the 9th okay for you?
The 9th works great.
Okay, so let's pencil in the 9th.
We'll book the 9th.
Good.
And if it's okay with the committee, we might do downstairs, but not the big room, but there's another one. The DeArmond room is a little bit larger than this one. It makes it easy for us to use a Zoom card. So if it's okay with the panel, we'll book that if it's available.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's easier for us with the video, not to use the big video.
I
stuff.
understand, yeah, because there's so many cameras that you gotta
Yes.
manage, yeah. And then the potential agenda topics, which I think is right on target with what Carrie was saying, juvenile use of cannabis from the health services, public health perspective, requirements for new retail locations. The marijuana, oh yeah, and then we do need to talk about how to allocate fiscal year 23-24 tax revenue, cannabis tax revenue in the county. So that's gonna be a pretty full agenda if we can get it all on there.
Yeah, and I was recommending the budget item sooner this year because last time we kind of ran up against when the budget committee was meeting. So if we start the discussion in January, that'll allow a little bit more time.
Right.
And we were new last year, so I think we're a little bit more in sync.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing.
So can I ask, can I ask what the requirements for the retail locations are?
Yeah, Commissioner Chang had recommended it. If there's a new, of course, the opt-out is for production, but there could be new retail establishments in the county or the unincorporated area, but there are certain requirements. There was a proposal in Tumalo, but the business didn't quite have either the parking or the business access. So Commissioner Chang just thought it'd be educational for the committee to learn about what are the requirements for new retail, and just kind of hear about that perspective.
I do think that we might have enough to talk about with those first two bullet points.
agree.
So maybe we put that new retail requirements in the next one in the spring. Yeah, the spring.
Yeah, that'll be,
Yeah.
we can do that. Because I think 2 seems to be the right amount. Two
Yeah,
key topics.
yeah. Does it make sense, Chris, to hear how the money was used in January, with those 3 allocations that we had made. Can we get a report?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that could be part of the presentation.
Yeah, okay. I think that would be helpful.
I have a quick question.
Yes,
Is there any way to find out our influence or ability to, have what was brought up as a major concern today on labeling through recreation? If we have any influence at all in that sector as far as warnings or, amounts that may be recommended for first-time users going forward?
I think it's a state issue.
I don't know if I understood your question.
I think what you're asking is there a way for us to address that, the terminology of recreation and eliminating that? But I think that's a state issue. I don't think there's anything that we can do anything about.
Is that what you were asking?
No, I guess what I'm trying to say is like more locally. If you were to go into a dispensary as a first-time user, getting either flower or extract, having the ability to have some type of influence on there for recommended dosages or warning labels, at least in our county, to say the adverse effects that may happen.
So this would be the employee at a retail facility educating a customer, is that right? A first-time customer?
That, or it just being on the label in general.
Well, and I do
There
think
is some
there's,
labeling at the state that they require, dosage is one, there's a special card you have to hand out to people that could possibly be pregnant. There are a few that, to his point, next year, I would love if this advisory committee got even deeper than recommendations of what to spend the tax money on. So I think there's a lot of things that we as a group should probably be looking at and discussing.
create a list of those things, share it with us so that we can agenda them on our future meetings.
You may want to just keep in mind that what the board
Is designed to do.
Yeah, I mean, the board was the panel was appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and what the board asked the group to do it's listed here, those 3 items. So I'd strongly encourage the group to stay within those 3.
But even within those 3 items, there's plenty of discussion
Absolutely.
that we can have on education. This is a great example. Mental health, enforcement, code issues that are going on, I think are all within our.
Yeah, I think as long as it falls within one of those, you're right, they're absolutely very broad.
So if you want to spend time as a group putting bullet items together, that's good, right? And then if you want to pick something to talk about, that's how much time you spent here. If recommendations come out, that's where we have disconnects. It's like, if you start telling us about something we didn't ask you about, well, let's acknowledge that.
Okay, we hear you.
But I mean, yeah, information is good. I'm not against it.
Yeah, I mean, that information right now.
Yeah.
Falls under one of those
Okay,
pillars.
any other questions, comments? Yes?
So yeah, the topic, you was just mentioned code enforcement issue. We have a property that was utilized and then walked away from, and now the property owner is cleaning up a process. And I was looking for an opportunity to maybe partners, show support, and shed light on the fact that this is what you don't do in our community. I don't know that we're really gonna get there. I mean, unless there's any other thoughts, and you and I worked on this a
We
little
have
bit.
the latitude to, really discuss that. I think it's something that is important to all of us. In one of our recommendations, one of the things that we mentioned is, I believe we recommended that some money go to code enforcement, which I believe you took that recommendation, some of it went to code enforcement. To your particular, for instance, that's an environmental tragedy. when we brought it up in this group, being that it's private property. We felt that first you had to go through the code enforcement avenue and all that. If it was public lands, I think you have plenty of people joining in. And, you know, we're still totally interested in it. I think people are waiting to see the teeth of the code enforcement first, since it's a private landowner in that situation.
Yep, and it's.
We're open to those things.
And my thought is, it's really, you know, shedding light on, you know, it's pretty clear, you know, there's a legal path and there's an illegal path. So let's celebrate one and shut down the other. So I mean, if there's a way to make that happen, that's kind of the value of the discussion we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you understand there's just a property that was kind of used and abused and the guys can't get it cleaned up.
Where-ish?
East side, man.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it was his choice to be involved and it's a code enforcement case there.
Yeah, and ignorance isn't necessarily.
Yeah, And I'm
defendable.
not, yeah, bad choice.
Yeah, he's gotta clean it up. Pay whatever. fines.
Thus, we wanted to put some funds towards code enforcement to help that, which was one of our recommendations. And we're always open to more, better ways to support that. I think.
And code enforcement, there is a valid open case and it doesn't get closed until it's resolved. So then it's just a slow escalation of, okay, you know, you said you were gonna do this, you didn't do this, let's take it to the next level. You know, it could be a court lien, it could be a, you know, financial hit on the property owner in the end, you know, but you don't come on strong and hard up front. You just start working with them, but it does escalate, it does not get closed until it's resolved. That's happened right now.
Okay, shall we adjourn? We shall adjourn. It is 7:39.
Yeah, thank you for letting.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for the information.
All right, we're gonna stop recording now.
So,